Hello and welcome, Mr. La Peña.
Sige, okay. So sige, i-on cam mo ako. Sige, i-on cam.
2 minutes to go.
Judith, sorry, I think Mr. La Peña was trying for tests. Maybe we can call him up again.
Mr. La Peña, would you like to, good morning, would you like to us to check your microphone to make sure it works properly?
Yeah, I'm now on board. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes.
Okay.
That's great.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Hello and good morning from London and good evening in Shanghai. Welcome back to the Green Skills for Green Jobs track of the WorldSkills Conference 2021. My name is Neil Bentley-Gottman. I am the CEO of WorldSkills in the UK, and I will be the moderator for this session. This is the second of the sessions in the Green Skills track and is themed Bringing Green Skills to Curriculums, a focus on the Asia-Pacific region. Now, yesterday we had a brilliant discussion as we opened the debate on green skills with the session about the impact of COVID-19 on green skills. And we looked at the effects of the pandemic from a global, public and private perspective and reviewed the avenues of cooperation between stakeholders. And that session can be watched online on the WorldSkills YouTube channel. And today, we are focusing our discussion in the Asia-Pacific region. The Asia-Pacific region is a great powerhouse of talent and skills with about 1.1 billion young people, according to the Asian Development Bank. It is extremely relevant for anywhere in the world to have an understanding on major Asian economies, which are helping to drive the world's economy in terms of policy making, but also in terms of economic development and change. So the conversation this morning is going to review strategies and implementation mechanisms in Asia-Pacific countries, and to look at the sectors driving the demand for green skills, as well as exploring cooperation opportunities. Now, on a few points of housekeeping, we have allocated 40 minutes to the discussion so that we can then open up the floor to our audience for questions and answers. And you'll notice on the conference platform that there's a Q&A section. So please, I encourage you to write your questions throughout the session, and we will choose the most relevant questions and address them at the end of our discussion. And we are under a tight time frame to finish on time within an hour. So I will do my best to keep us on time. But without any further ado, please let me introduce our amazing panel that we've assembled and who've consented to join us today for this discussion. starting with Mr. Libing Wang, who is the Chief of Section for Educational Innovation and Skills Development at UNESCO Asia Pacific Regional Bureau for Education, based in Bangkok. We also have Ms. Chen Haina, who is the Vice President of Guangzhou Industry and Trade Technical College in China. We're joined by Mr. Isidro La Peña, who's the Director General for Technical Education and Skills Development Authority from the Philippines. Also joining us on the panel is Lo Sopirith, who's the Deputy Director for Cambodia National Employment Agency. And finally, we're also joined by Amina Mahajan, who's the Senior Specialist in Livelihoods and Migration at the International Center for Integrated Mental Development, based out of Nepal. So welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us this morning. Now, the first part of our discussion is about country and regional strategies and implementation mechanisms. Driven by innovation in specific job sectors, national development strategies, or climate policy agendas, the ever-evolving nature of the transition to the green economy poses an additional challenge to the effective planning and delivery of relevant TVET. So I'm first going to ask Libing Wang from UNESCO to talk to us a little bit about the main strategies for bringing green skills into TVET curricula across countries, particularly in the Asia-Pacific level. So over to you, Libing.
Thank you, Neil. Greetings from UNESCO Asia and the Pacific Regional Bureau, based here in Bangkok, Thailand. Thank you for engaging us. I'm really excited to be with you today. And the answer to this question is very simple, that we need to be systematic and holistic when it comes to the inclusion of green skills into the TVET curriculum. First, we need to have a strong qualification framework as an overarching academic infrastructure. I know that some of you may already have this in place, but many of you do not have this qualification framework. And I would like to say that before we integrate any green skills into the curriculum, we need to revise qualification framework. We need to redevelop this occupational specific quality standards and make it into a kind of program development templates and course planning templates. This is very practical, and I think we cannot leave it only to the school TVET teachers, but also we need to create this very holistic academic infrastructure. Secondly, we need also to create a very good ecosystem to make it happen, which means actually at policy level, institutional level, and also capacity building of the TVET teaching personnel, which is, of course, very holistic. And the third, I would also like to emphasize that green skills is not only about skills. It's about knowledge and understanding. It's about skills and the capacity to take action. It's also about values and attitudes. So usually we use these three terms: sensitive, responsive, and transformative. Sensitive means you have the knowledge and understanding, but responsive means you have the ability to take action at the classroom level, and transformative means that you really integrate this into your daily work. So that's a very brief reply from me. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you, Libing. And that's fantastic framing, actually, for us to be thinking about, how we look at national level initiatives. Now, before I just turned to Isidro La Peña from the Philippines, can I just mention that for those who are needing Chinese interpretation, that is available on the screen. If you click on the interpretation box, you'll be able to access Chinese interpretation. Now, let's turn to those country-specific examples, and first of all, to the Philippines, which I think is a great example of working with UNESCO in the implementation of the frameworks that Libing has just mentioned. So, Isidro, what systematic or strategic changes have been implemented at the national level in the Philippines? And tell us a little bit how you've been collaborating with international bodies like UNESCO to implement the framework and standardization. So, Isidro, over to you, please.
Thank you for that question. But first, please allow me to greet everyone in this WorldSkills conference a very pleasant day. And to answer the question, let me just share that there are several policies that drive the Philippines' transition to a green economy, such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, the Philippine Development Plan 2017 to 2022, and the Philippine Green Jobs Act. The Philippines, through the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA, being the agency mandated to lead TVET in our country, is spearheading the green shift in the TVET sector to the greening of training regulations. We also have the TESDA Green Technology Center that takes the lead in crafting related projects to advance the green TVET. In particular, the Philippine Green Jobs Act, number 10771, steered TESDA to establish the Philippines Greening TVET framework, adopting the UNESCO Univoc whole of the institution approach aligned with the International Labour Organization, or ILO, policy, guidelines on just transition towards environmentally sustainable economies and societies for all. The framework's components include green jobs or skills, green policies, green competency standards, training regulations, green institutional culture, and green communities. During the first Green TVET Forum hosted by TESDA, three pivotal elements in greening the TVET system were highlighted: the TVET campus, TESDA's training regulation and TVET curricula, and learning materials and institutional culture. As identified, the goal is to ensure greening of the economy in sectors such as industry, agriculture, and service. We cannot overemphasize that TVET indeed plays a very important role in transforming our economy into a low-carbon economy or green economy. Green skills are an integral part of any country's sustainable development.
Thank you very much. That is an impressive set of policies and reviews that have been established in the Philippines. Particularly, I think I'm taken with the work that TESDA is doing on green technology, as well as greening the TVET dialogue and the Green Jobs Act, and how all of those fit together with your work with UNESCO and the ILO to make sure that greening is integrated into your thinking and your practice. Now moving on to Cambodia, another example, I think. So from Lo, it would be great to hear what is the stage of development of Cambodia's implementation of the greening agenda and green skills development policies. Over to you, Lo, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed we can.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, talking about the green skill in Cambodia. So far, Cambodia have actually we have the green growth policy, which is covered everything. Our policy was developed in 2013, and it covered from economic to social and culture. Actually, as I learned from my college at TVET, that now TVET is on the track to developing the greening skill, which is in the partnership with the Swiss contract and ILO, so on and so forth. And in the green, what they are planning about the greening is about they plan to have a greening TVET institute And then India's green campus, about green curriculum, green community, green research, green culture. It's all about the green, that to bring the green skill in our Tibet. Before Cambodia, we stick to the idea that, not we stick to the idea, but mostly when we talk about the green, it's about the environmental, the ecotourism, the forest, whatever. But the green skill is not really new in Cambodia, but it will be new in the implementing the greening skill in the Tibet curriculum. And I've been talking to my Tibet college about this. And what I got back from them, that they hope that they will finish the curriculum, the policy, the guidelines soon. And when they finish, I just want to know, I will let you know that how much I involve the preparation process. And then I will know what is the implementation stage, what will be the challenging. And in a nutshell, most of everything about the greening in Cambodia, about the greening skill, is on the preparation stage. Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is brilliant, just to hear exactly what's going on in each of the countries, because there's clearly a lot of progress and a lot of activity and a lot of programs being made to integrate green skills into curriculum and TVET. But now let's go over to China for a perspective, and to Chen, who's from the Guangzhou Industry and Trade Technician College. So Chen, could you please maybe give us an overview of the systemic reforms implemented in China to bring green skills to the curricula, and how does that translate into practice from your experience at an institutional college level? Over to you, Chen.
Okay, dear moderator, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to come here. And please allow me to briefly introduce China's policy guidance. Well, in recent years, China has been implementing policies to promote ecological development, and Chinese development decides that it will implement policies by 2035 and to peak carbon emission and to build beautiful China, all those national level policies in the general sense. And this year, in the 14th five-year plan, there was another policy to target green development, green consumption, and green environment, etc. All this can show how much emphasis Chinese government is playing on green development.
Based on these policies, the Chinese vocational technical training and education is closely following the national policy guidelines. We are trying to connect with new formats and new technologies in the industrial development. We are also trying to updating our curriculum to cultivate our students' environmental awareness and green skills. Let's take our institution, GZITTC, as an example. First, we are all about prioritizing awareness. We promote conservation and environmental protection in our campus. Secondly, we establish green majors. We are actively connecting our students to emerging industries for our province in renewables and new materials. We established green majors, including photovoltaic application as well as new energy vehicles. And we plan to open up new majors in hydrogen technologies and new energy materials. Thirdly, we are reinforcing our reform in our curriculum. Based on the 5R principles of the WorldSkills competition, we are integrating relevant standards and requirements in our curriculum to develop talent cultivation plans and training curriculum, combining the efforts of our campus as well as enterprises, so that industrial standards, green knowledge, and technological qualifications are integrated into our curriculum. Firstly, we are perfecting our evaluation system by integrating green technical skills into our criteria. to better evaluate our students' results. Fifthly, we are promoting training towards teachers of vocational schools, home and abroad, as well as technical staff and enterprises to populate the idea of green skills, as well as to promote the application of green skills. Thank you.
Jen?
Moderator, can you help me?
That is fascinating insight into not just only national policy developments, but also how you as a college are taking that and really developing it into and integrating it into your curriculum. And I was particularly pleased to hear that you are using it for the development of young people who are participating in the WorldSkills competitions-based training programs. That's fantastic to hear. Moving on from that great example, moving on to Amina for a very different perspective, I think, on green skills development strategies. Your organisation, I don't think is specifically in the TVET sector, but your experience is relevant because of the programs, I think, and programs focus on capacity building in green skills in the Himalayan countries. So perhaps, Amina, you can give us a bit of maybe a transnational perspective from the Hindu Kush region and talk to us a little bit about the situation in the region in terms of green skills and green jobs, and what are the challenges to capacity building? Over to you, Amina.
Thank you so much, Neil. I hope I'm audible. And thank you to the organization for this opportunity. Just for clarification, ICIMOD, the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, we work in the 8 countries where the Hindu Kush Himalayan region is spread over. So in this region, if you look at green skills and jobs, a couple of years back, there was not even a common definition, but now there is definitely a lot of interest, and green jobs are very much in the agenda of all the countries here. But there is still a lack of, what is really the actual demand, what are the gaps, skill gaps. So those assessments are still at the nascent stage. But what is common is in this region, almost all the government have taken, this green skills as an approach. So not really looking at it as a different kind of skills, but in present curriculum, how do you bring that green lens to it? More integration, something that Mr. Wang has mentioned before. And in this process, of course, different countries are different stages. For example, India has actually already established Skill Council for Green Jobs. And they already have 350 training centers only in renewable energy, in the spread over 7 states. Whereas other countries are taking it differently. Nepal is looking into its present curriculum from more green lens. Pakistan, as a post-COVID recovery path, one of the paths, they have come with this very famous 10 billion tree tsunami. So, the methods are very different. As you said, we are not, ICIMOD is not, we don't work really in TVET and curriculum, but we understand the importance and the potential in this region. So what we are doing is we are also doing a study to see actually, because all of these are theoretical discussions, but actually in practice, how much is the demand? Where are the skill gaps? Because that would be very, very important. But what we can also say from our experience working in this region for now more than 3 decades is in mountain context, because nothing large scale happens in mountains. It's always small. So enterprises are very important because a lot of people go for self-employment. So this is where I think, from mountain perspective, it's very important. And somewhere that we are working with government of Bhutan. Government of Bhutan really wants to develop this green and resilient enterprises as startups. And they look at the entire ecosystem from skills to financial support and all. And there we are working very closely with the government and helping them developing a curriculum, not in skills or mentorship, because young startups need a lot of mentoring. And we are helping the government in developing a mentorship curriculum. Again, this region, another not so peculiar, but still, it's a region where labor migration is very, very high. So you have a very mobile labor force. Most of them within this region, and a lot of them have common destination in GCC countries, Malaysia. So, regional cooperation is very, very important. You have such a high mobile labor force, then having, training certificates that's actually accepted by other countries, then that really makes it easier for people to, get trained in your home country, go abroad, or you are in another country getting trained, but then you are recognized at home, so that, that helps in resettling. So those are very, very important things. And that's something I think all of us remember when the first COVID happened. There was lockdown, and that hundreds of thousands of migrant workers going back. And that, I think, shows the importance of migration, regional cooperation in the region. Once again, mountain context, because I can't forget it. Very important that it has a lot of limitation, but also a lot of opportunities. Self-employment, very, very important, but also technology and skills. Let me stop at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nina. It's fascinating. And also you make a very, very important point from a transnational perspective about the point about qualifications being developed and recognized by other countries, particularly to encourage labour mobility, particularly where we see lots of labour migration between countries. And that's, I know, something that WorldSkills is also interested in. But to continue along this theme of really thinking about the global level and Asia Pacific, what we've been hearing, is in really all of the countries we're talking about anticipating market-based skills needs to integrate sustainability and new green skills into curricula and training. But of course, data on market and skills demand or investments in green tech shows a serious mismatch between supply and demand. And it's difficult, therefore, for information to be translated, I think, into localized skills development strategies. We're going back to UNESCO and Libing, can we really identify specific sectors that are driving demand for green skills in the Asia-Pacific region from UNESCO's perspective? And are there local strategies, and how are they being matched with the requirements within sectors for market-based skills needs? Libing, over to you.
Thank you, Neil. I think for the first question, it's not possible to identify common sectors driving the demands for green skills, because every country, we have such a huge diversity in this region in terms of development stage, in terms of tradition of TVET provisions, So I don't think it's easy to find a common sectors. But of course, we will see when we see green skills, it's really a kind of requirement for us to review our existing provisions or the existing curriculums from the lens of sustainable development, right? So this is really the things I think I would like to answer. But of course, a very solid national statistical infrastructure is very important. And of course, we can see a lot of good examples where the job centers, employment centers, they are producing all this kind of big data with job descriptions, with TORs, and with all the skills are included, right? Requirements, qualifications. So why not we start with these requirements or, demand-driven TVET program development mechanism, started with skills anticipation or skills forecasting from the job market, and then to see, if we can turn this skills forecasting into learning outcomes, then go back to inform the revision of the occupation-specific quality standards, even to the qualification framework. So this is really a kind of things, and UNESCO is very much like to see a very solid statistical infrastructure for informed decisions on TVET at system level and also at institutional level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yibing, and that's a very honest and clear answer around I think the challenges around sectoral-based comparisons, given how different, as you say, different sectors are. But perhaps we could go back to Amina in the Hindu Kush region and just asking the same sort of question: are there specific sectors creating demand for green skills, and how is data, skill demand data used really to leverage public and private investments in green skills? What is your experience from your regional transnational perspective? Over to you, Amina.
Thank you. I think if we look into the HKH, the Hindu Kush in Himalayan region, then I think there are certain sectors which has a lot of potential, or that has been identified by the countries for green jobs. One of them is definitely renewable energy. I mean, it's in Himalayan region, so we call it, water tower of Asia. So obviously, when you have so much of water and all that elevation, so hydropower, definitely a huge potential. And this sector definitely have a huge job potential. For example, I think India covers almost 19% of the total jobs created in hydropower sector globally, if I'm not wrong. Nepal and Bhutan has, again, huge potential. Secondly, solar energy. I mean, Nepal, we get 300 plus days of full sunshine. This year has been an exception. But this also is a sector which creates a lot of jobs. Bangladesh, I think around 137,000 jobs expected in the solar system. Another sector is bioenergy. Particularly if you're talking about rural sectors, then bioenergy is very, very important. Biogas really has direct job potential, but also indirect, jobs creation. So renewable energy in general has, I think, a huge potential, particularly from mountain context, and because it also has, it can contribute to economic growth and induce job creation in the process. Also, something that we are increasingly looking into this region is energy efficient buildings. These are relatively new, I would say, but very much talked upon and worked upon. Energy efficiency in general, not only in buildings, in general in other sectors are also very important. For instance, we at ICIMOD are also working on improved cooking stove. A lot of biofuels are used, so that creates a lot of demand. And brick kilns, one of our biggest polluters, but also it employs a lot of people and a lot of scope. In India alone, I think around 10 million people work in brick kilns. So both these sectors have huge potential. And in both sectors, we are actually working. And working with private sector is very important. Brick kilns, if you don't work with private sector, you can't convince them. It becomes extremely difficult to change the technologies and bringing that, developing those skills and trainings. Similarly, greening economic growth per se, for example, ecotourism. Tourism is very, very important for the HKH region. I think it generates almost 1 million jobs in Nepal and 40 million in India. So these are very, very important. And at ICIMOD, what we are trying to do is how do you build ecotourism, bringing more sustainable energy into it. So those are some of the pilots that we are doing. Similarly, agriculture sector, agriculture crop burning, you hear every November. Soon you'll be hearing more. That is another area where actually we can solve problem as well as create opportunities. Transport, not only automobiles, but also road. I'm presently in the mountains and the road, everybody wanted to have road access because we are inaccessible for such a long time. Now suddenly we realize having access is not important. Sustainability of the roads are important. That can create immense number of jobs in remote areas. Circular economy. South Asia is known for pollution now, all the major cities. So that's another area, again, a huge potential. As I said, we know that it is there, but we don't know how many jobs. What are the skill gaps? Where are the skill needs? And this is where I think would be the first step. Once we have these, then we can think about, developing skill curriculum and so on. And as Mr. Wang just mentioned, using that data, but it's not so easy. this data that is required, because for instance, in tourism, there is methodology, tourism satellite accounts that really help you calculate jobs, but the data required is scattered over different ministries. So this is where I think the governments will have to take a lead, because for non-government organizations, getting that data is very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. So, governments really working synergistically would be very, very helpful in generating data. What we have, we are now trying to do it, but we have also worked with IRENA to see, what we have renewable energy, so what potential use it can be other than lighting or heating purpose, so that we have more jobs. So we did that in a few selected food value chains. So that's another way to look at it. But overall, I think once we know the demands, the gaps, that's when then we can start working on the skills development or changes in skills. I hope I managed to answer your questions. Thank you. Over to you.
You have indeed, and I think what's clear from your answers, there is incredible sector-specific demand from everything you've mentioned, from energy and hydropower to energy efficiency and ecotourism. Lots of sectors are being challenged and are stepping up to those challenges. But I think, as you also said, in terms of data, it's very difficult to come by, and there's clearly an opportunity, I think, for more transnational cooperation and collaboration on data demand over data sharing, which may be something we can come back to a bit later. But for now, just building on what Amina said, let's go back to Cambodia and to Lo. And what do we know? What do you know, Lo, of the sectors that are driving demand for green skills in Cambodia? And how do you think, or how can we ensure that the TVET systems are in line or getting in line with these market demands? Over to you, Lo.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right now, we don't have any specific survey or statistic to prove that the demand for the green skill in Cambodia in the particular. But by experience or by the country geographic itself, the green skill mostly required by the tourism, ecotourism, and renewable energy sector. But if you ask me what particular in that sector or what percentage, so far we don't have any study yet about that particular skill or particular sector. But just last year, our NEA have conducted one survey. We don't focus on the green skill, but we focus on the green practicing in the sector. And it's surprising that more than 67% of every establishment, they introduce the green practice in their organization. And inside that, the garment, footwear, and apparel sector, they ask more than 80% of them, they introduce the green practice in their workplace. And we see the positive way of applying the green practice, and we hope that the green skill is not difficult to apply in our country. And as I mentioned earlier, that the TVET itself is in the state of preparation about the green curriculum, the green skill, and I believe that with our green growth policy and with the Cambodia geographic itself, that mostly we are the tropical area, and we have the green ecotourism, we have the environmental, called the natural environmentalist people, that all of these things will be a part of the green curriculum preparation. And any curriculum prepare will take those kind of things into consideration.
Thank you. And it is fascinating to hear how sectors are moving towards these green practices, whether, as you said, whether it's in sort of textiles and logistics, that there is increasing awareness of, from a company and a sector perspective, of the need to be greener, maybe to be more energy efficient in their practices. And then moving across to the Philippines and back to a TESDA perspective, Isidro, could you perhaps tell us about the requirements of the private sector in the Philippines, and what you're experiencing and hearing and seeing from private sector businesses, and also the strategies of your TVET systems in maintaining the sort of synergy with those leading sectors and how they're responding and adapting to the change that's coming about. Over to you, Isidro.
In the Philippines, green jobs are found and promoted through the greening of processes, products, and services, as well as ecosystem management. Based on the green jobs mapping study of the ILO, most of the green jobs are available in the construction, transport, and in the agriculture and fisheries sector. To address this, TESDA provides up-to-date skills training programs for the vet scholars who would want to venture into the said industries. Education has been seen as a way to address the growing environmental challenges. The adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals strengthens its role to further promote education for sustainable development. With this, we aim to stimulate the learners' learning and promote core competencies. As part of our strategies, the agency designed teaching and learning in an interactive, learner-centered way that enables exploratory, action-oriented, and transformative learning with the vision to empower learners of any age in any education setting to transform themselves and the society they live in. TESDA Green Technology Center, or GTC, is also undeniably value-adding to address the concern on sustainability. It has offered various green skills training courses catering to the needs for emerging green jobs, where green technology is integrated with the technical vocational curriculum. It has also been involved in the greening of training regulations, as well as in the training of trainers on green technologies and environment-related competencies, assessment and certification, training induction program, seminars and technical learning sessions, exhibits, researches, and extension programs. The Philippines shall continue working with the private sector to ensure that our efforts and strategies in pursuing a green TVET are aligned with the needs of the market. We assure you of our local and international cooperation in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isidro. And TESDA is obviously a powerful force, I think, in terms of helping to drive this important agenda. And congratulations to you and your team for making green skills such a central focus, I think, in the work that you're doing in the Philippines and responding to market and business demand. And perhaps now just going over to China for a perspective, and back to Chen, thinking about what sectors are driving demand for green skills in China, and what training gaps have maybe you identified, either from a country perspective or what you're seeing from your college perspective in Guangzhou. So Chen, back to you, please.
Thank you, moderator. Well, right now, China's green economy is mainly about manufacturing of medical technology, agriculture, and variety of sectors. Now, green skills is actually advocated in all different sectors in China. Now, as it develops, the market has a higher demand for green skill talents. Well, according to the Department of Education, the Department of Human Resources, according to a report about the talents in manufacturing industry, by 2025, there will be a gap of 1.03 million talents in the area of energy conservation and new energy vehicles. And the talent gap in the area of new materials is 4 million. And there will be a shortage of 450,000 talents in pharmaceutical and high-performing medical equipment, and a shortage of 440,000 in the area of agricultural machinery and equipment. Well, in the past, China focused on research talents in green development. But in recent years, the government devoted more investments into this area, and we have built national level VET competition and to train social talents, I mean those outside of colleges, and to improve the quality of training and to train more talents in VET and to train those professionals who are already in the area. So I believe that in the future, the Chinese government will cultivate more green talents to meet the shortages that it is facing right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. And those are some startling numbers in terms of the scale of the mismatch and some of the gaps, but it is very encouraging to hear the work that is going on to address those from a policy and a practical, I think, perspective as well, and particularly, no doubt, in the work that you're doing in your college. But now we're moving on to the last bit of our discussion around regional cooperation, and thank you everybody so far for their inputs. And I think it's clear that while we've seen that green skills are overarching, affecting every sector, there are some specific industries which vary across countries that are generating potentially more demand for sustainable practices. So before we conclude this session, I'd just like to briefly explore platforms and examples available in the region for cooperation and convergence. And I'm going to go back to UNESCO and to Li Bing, first of all, to just give us an insight perhaps on how we can build effective regional cooperation and alliances, and what maybe can be done to improve cooperation within the Asia-Pacific region itself. Over to you, back to you, Li Bing.
Thank you, Neil. From UNESCO perspective, I think it's quite clear that we need to, first of all, we need to promote information sharing for transparency among different TVET systems in this region. Even, so diversified policies and practices, even, that how to categorize all the occupations, you are quite different, actually. So I think it's quite important that we need to share information to promote transparency. But of course, it's not enough. It's only as a starting point. We would like to see comparability, push for comparability of the TVET provisions so that all the TVET qualifications can be given equivalency arrangement among countries in this region. But it's also not enough. We also need to move up to pushing for compatibility, which means that we need to move towards the same direction, right? And finally, I think it's very important for UNESCO to really push for harmonization of TVET provisions in this region. So I think this is really very important and a lot of potentials for us to move in this way. Although harmonization is not that easy, it's not a kind of, it's a diversity within unity, right? Rather than dictating anything. So I think this should be the way forward. And yes, I would also, another thing is really we can do something together to reduce the gaps between the supply and the demand side, actually, which means that TVET institution dominated modality should be really reviewed, and then we need to have a closer collaboration among TVET and the human resource development of the industry, which is very direct, right? To nurture each other, to inform each other. So this is what we would like to propose. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Libing. And that's some really important points there around harmonisation and qualification recognition. I think that Amina put that point up earlier, as well as data sharing. So there's clearly lots that can be done. But perhaps to get a different perspective, to go back to Chen at the Guangzhou Industry and Trade Technical College, because institutions can also play a direct role in establishing alliances that can enrich regional cooperation. And I think that Chen, your college, brings some great case studies of alliances with international organizations and countries within Asia. Perhaps, Chen, you could tell us a bit more about that. And I think from my notes that we have a short video as well, potentially to watch from you. So back to you, Chen, please.
好的，主持人。那
Thank you, moderator. Okay, let's take our college as an example. Let's talk a little bit about our cooperation projects with countries on the One Belt One Road. And first, we undertook a refrigeration curriculum, which was supported by the Montreal Protocol. Our environmental agency opened up a public bid, and our institution was chosen to become the first refrigeration best practice center that opens up to international students. We mostly focus on air conditioning maintenance, and we also undertake international cooperation. It started in 2018, and about $250,000 was invested in. And for now, we have 8 training curriculums, and we have students from 20 countries and regions along the One Belt One Road. Refrigeration engineers and technicians, 400 of them participated in the session, and we promoted greatly of a more environmentally friendly refrigerant agent. And we also worked with One Belt One Road countries to open up curriculum, which was supported by the World Bank, and the Bangladesh government invested more than $1 million. A government agency from Bangladesh worked together with our institution. We have 31 sessions, and in our training sessions, we focus a lot on awareness of environmental protection, and we also focus on skills development. In 2018 to 2019, we trained Bangladeshi officials as well as CNC machining operation, web development, vehicle maintenance, as well as electrical circuit maintenance and fashion design. We trained 518 people in these fields. Now let's take a look at a clip to know a little bit more about these 2 projects. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
very much, Chen. And thank you for those great examples and video. And now we just have a little bit of time to go to a couple of questions that have come from our audience. And I wonder if I can go to Yibing from a UNESCO perspective, perhaps, to think about this first question, which is from Felipe Menin. And he asks, how important is it to develop sets of skills that are co-related with green skills, like communication, creativity, complex problem solving, and big data? We often talk about green skills as being very sector specific, but of course there are these interrelated skills which also are co-related. So I wonder if UNESCO perhaps has any perspective on those sorts of skills that need to be developed alongside core green skills.
Thank you. I think all the green skills can be divided into transversal and job-specific skills. That's for sure. And we are thinking of, if we would like to argue for the inclusion of anything, we need to start by reviewing the existing one, if we already have it or not, right? And in reality, we keep adding things to the already very clouded curriculum without having a mapping, of the existing one, which is very dangerous, right? So I think many of the skills and the competencies is already in the curriculum already. And what we need is really to review all the competencies and skills, and with this sustainable development lens, this is what we want, rather than start from the scratch and inventing the new one, right? So this is our perspective, and I would like to say that the curriculum is already very clouded to accommodate transversal skills and the job-specific one. But if we can really review this from this green perspective, it will be better. So I think this is my answer from our perspective. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And then going to another question, we don't know who it's from, but perhaps I could ask this to Amina. And this is about countries that have depended, I guess, traditionally on fossil fuels, oil and gas for energy supply and generation. Is there anything from your transnational regional perspective that you think are important initial steps for economies to be able to take towards moving towards the development of a green economy and green jobs? Any thoughts, Amina?
Yes, because some of the countries in the region are really depend on oil, gas, obviously. But what is impressive is the kind of commitment that the countries have taken to move, because we can't expect things to happen overnight, would happen gradually. And if you look at the examples in the region, particularly China and India, I think they are. It's not an easy process, to be honest. From HK's perspective, okay, I don't want to answer this question because there's hardly very few oil, gas, there even within the country in this region, because we are more or less green. But I would say that, seeing what are the other alternatives and start working on it, that would be the way forward. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Amina. And I'm afraid that brings this session to a close. We have to end here. But the conversation on green skills continues in the next session of this WorldSkills conference. And that starts in 15 minutes. And that's called a showcase. That's about job-rich opportunities of the green transition. And that will be delivered by UNESCO UNIVOC and UNIDO, who will look in detail into some of the topics that we've been discussing here. So this following session will serve as a reference point, I think, for TVED institutions to learn about business restructuring priorities, ongoing partnership models, and innovative green skills development approaches. Also parallel to that session, there's another session which is all about the WorldSkills occupational standards. So please join either one of those sessions. So that just leaves me to thank all of our coalition partners partners for supporting the WorldSkills Conference and for helping to make it happen, and for all the speakers in this fantastic session. Thank you all, to Li Bing, to Chen, to Isidro, to Lo, and to Amina. Thank you all for your significant contributions and for bringing to life and highlighting all the work that you are all doing in the Asia Pacific region to green your economies and to make sure that we are developing green skills and green jobs for the future. Now, all it remains for me to say now is to remember that you can join other tracks throughout the rest of the week, and our closing plenary on Friday is something to look forward to, because we will be drawing the conclusions of the whole conference together, as well as setting the agenda for the WorldSkills Conference 2022 taking place in Shanghai. And of course, we will also be giving you a sneak peek to the upcoming WorldSkills Museum. Now, that's the first ever museum dedicated to vocational training in the world, and that will be launched in Shanghai next year to coincide with WorldSkills taking place in Shanghai. So lots to look forward to for the rest of the conference and the end of the week. And I hope that I will see you there at the Friday session, where we'll be drawing together a lot of the lessons learned about green skills. So, but for today, thank you and goodbye. Have a great day wherever you are, and a great evening in Shanghai. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Neil. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.